12 years, multiple affairs, and finally disentangling our lives. Although we'll never truly be free from one another. Lurking for a couple of months, and I've been reading a lot of other experiences on here that have helped me get perspective on my own. I am in my mid-30s, had been with my now ex-F in her mid-30s, for well over a decade at the time of the affair. We have a beautiful child together, and we shared some of our best years together. Our son will always hurt because his mom left us, but I've done my best to support him and I never speak ill of his mother, reassuring him that his mother will always love him, that I'll never ever leave him, and she's just doing what she feels is what she needs to do even though it hurts right now. He's in his own children's counseling, but this post isn't about my child. That's mainly context because ever since the breakup proper I've been looking out for him first, which made it harder to heal myself, another thing I've discussed in IC. It's still early days, coming right up on a year from my first D-Day and I'm finally ready to get it all out in writing and hopefully let go. One of the tasks I discussed with my counselor, before I stopped needing to see them, was writing a letter to my WS expressing all of the feelings the infidelity made me feel. I still have that letter ready to do a burning ceremony, relationship funeral when things settle down and I can celebrate with my friends my new life. In a similar vein, I thought I would document all of the traumatic events around the breakdown of our relationship in the hope that it'll help me to let it all go. Please bear with me as this may end up being quite a long post. While I fully expect that there are enough details for the WS to know who she is, I've left everything as vague as possible. History. We first met in our teens, and started as friends with shared hobbies, bonding over books and our love of games. We lost touch as I started my higher education and she got on with the rest of her own adult life, moving out, getting a job, getting engaged etc. A couple of years later, we reconnected, reminiscing over the good times we had and talking about all kinds of deep and meaningful topics, love, life, philosophy, spirituality etc. We eventually started dating and went through a brief period of a distance relationship as she moved back home sometime after her previous engagement went sour. A year after I finished my degree we moved in together, found what jobs we could to pay the rent and enjoyed our young adult lives, freedoms and struggles together. Life was good and there was so much potential for the future. It wasn't the perfect relationship, but it was what I wanted at the time. We communicated well, we got along, we had so much fun together, we shared so many dreams for the future and were working towards shared goals. Long story short, for us getting properly hitched, we had an unplanned pregnancy, and both agreed that we would build a family together. She sort of offered me an ultimatum as she was the first to say that she wanted to have the child. It was at that time that I had, foolishly or not, committed and devoted myself to her and our future child. We moved before the baby came to be closer to family, did all of the right things after the baby, settled down, got semi-stable jobs, did more study to further our careers, juggled life's responsibilities, moved a few times for career opportunities, started a few businesses, side hustles, etc. The relationship had fundamentally changed, as all relationships do over time, but we never had the same level of intimacy or connection as adults. A lot of that I can confidently chalk up to her own childhood abuse and traumas, some of which I knew about before we got together, which really reared their head after the baby. I tried to encourage her to seek professional help to manage those parts of herself that were making her life hard. You never really get over past trauma. She saw at least half a dozen therapists and counselors throughout our relationship but none ever stuck. Despite the lack of intimacy, primarily sex, we did it less than once every 3-4 months. I stuck with it, attempting to be the best me I could be, the best dad I could be and the best husband. I would regularly, gently and tactfully, communicate how that lack of intimacy made me feel and how important it was to me, even though I was incredibly satisfied with the other elements of our relationship. But that never sat well with her. She never felt good enough because I never saw results of any work she was doing to address the intimacy issues. We communicated less and less over the years. I would try all of the things she asked from me to help rebuild that intimacy, for example, give me space, love me more, help out around the house more, stop doing everything for me, be romantic, be consistent. I feel the need to say I wasn't perfect, even though no one is, and that's an unrealistic expectation to put on real-world partners. I was, and am, loving, attentive, considerate, a good provider, a good father. But probably honest to a fault, and every time I communicated that there was something that I didn't like, it was taken as a personal affront. Ultimately though, it was never about me. Red flag number 1, but I was a naive young man at the time, and as Wanda Pierce says, when you look at someone through rose-colored glasses, all the red flags just look like flags. Was that, when we reconnected but before we started dating, she had been having sex with a few other guys. This was right after her engagement fell apart. Now clear to me was a result of the cheating, but once I found out, I communicated my expectations, how it made me feel, and that I wanted an exclusive relationship. I excused the behavior because it was before we had talked about being exclusive, so thought it was pretty reasonable when she agreed that we wouldn't sleep with other people and she took steps to be exclusively with me. She stopped communicating with all but one of the other men. The one she kept in contact with was a friend of hers who gave her a place to stay after her engagement fell apart. In time, that friendship eventually dissolved and that part of her life was behind her. While she was always quite flirty early on in our relationship, it never bothered me because I was self-assured enough to know that she was with me and that if she ever did anything to breach that trust, I could walk away. Not to mention, if it did bother me, at that stage in our relationship I felt confident that I could bring it up and she would respect my boundaries. The affairs. Day number 1. Well over a decade into our life together, after building a family and thinking about forever, she had sex with one of my best friends. I knew something was going on, but just not what exactly it was. She ended up having sex with him a few times before I found out about it, after seeing a text message pop up on her phone in bed that made me uncomfortable. I snooped on her computer to get the proof I needed to confront her about it. They say don't look for proof unless you have a plan when you're proven right/wrong. I had a plan. I confronted her about it calmly and quietly after she got home and our son was in bed. I told her what I could prove, and asked her if she still wanted to be in the relationship together, that it was a massive betrayal of trust, etc. 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 She was fairly remorseful but went straight to minimizing that she was going to tell me right after that weekend, because it wasn't a good time. She agreed to work on our relationship and reconcile, although it took a few weeks to break off the affair, and needless to say I don't speak with AP number 1 anymore. It was something I was willing to work through and forgive, although she was stuck in her own suffering too much to help me or our relationship heal. I looked after myself and our son, and never considered kicking her out over the affair. I said I wanted to attend MC and we organized it together shortly after, that is, looked through professional profiles of counselors and picked the one that we thought was right for us. Day number 2. 2 months later, she relapsed, having a one-night stand with a guy she had just met at a work event. Obviously it didn't take long for me to figure out what she had done after not coming home that night. It only took a few weeks for her to confess to the affair, and at that time we were attending MC regularly to work through the reconciliation process together. The worst mistake I think I made was not taking a stronger stance, that is kicking her out for continuing the affair, on maintaining contact with AP number 2. I had been gaslighted to shit and somehow got self-conscious about establishing boundaries for fear of being too controlling. After all, I didn't want to be in a relationship with a child, although I later realized during IC that I had been parenting 2 children for a long time. We continued on with MC and got through that affair after she finally agreed to not contact AP number 2. I was getting advice from places like Affair Recovery which suggested that doing push behaviors were not helpful in rebuilding a relationship after an affair. I knew how much work we had ahead of us, and I was up for the challenge for the sake of our family. Apparently she wasn't. Day number 3. After months of work on ourselves and our relationship, I thought we were making progress. We made specific times to talk about our recovery work, at MC and a few hours each week, and we're doing regular work on ourselves to forgive and heal. Outside of those scheduled times we had a much better life routine. We were doing more things as a family, and as a couple we had regular dates and fun activities together. Unfortunately, right before the pandemic hit, she decided to have another sexual affair with a friend, AP number 3, that she had been developing an emotional affair with, again behind my back. She was away on business, again, and I woke up in the middle of the night knowing something wasn't right. Rather than snooping, I gave her an opportunity to confess to what I felt she had done when she got back from the trip. She neglected to take the opportunity, assuring me that nothing happened and tried to have sex with me that night, which I said was a bad idea. The next day I got the evidence I needed and unceremoniously yelled at her, set my boundaries and made a plan for her to leave. I should have just kicked her ass out because a couple of tense months later she moved across the country to be with AP number 3 and his kids. This was despite agreeing with our son that she would be moving out to a place nearby so that she could stay in his life. Today, we're still in a COVID-19 world and things are weird. I sometimes miss the life I thought I had, I miss the woman I thought existed, I miss the future I wanted. But I know none of that ever really existed. I have a really challenging career, and balancing my adult responsibilities as a single dad is really tough. I haven't looked after myself as well as I could have during the last year, but I know I can take the time when I'm ready to re-establish healthy routines and keep making myself the best I can be. Fortunately I have friends and family who have been there to support me through this whole time, even when I have refused to talk to anyone about my struggles. I'm really lucky. I'll still have her in my life. We are working on co-parenting arrangements, which are going to be very challenging. I constantly feel our son is being let down by her and that she'll never show remorse in a meaningful way, and will probably never do anything to try and make up for all of the pain she's caused. My IC has helped me get to a place where I know it's not my responsibility whether she can get herself together to be the mom that our child needs. All I can do is be the best I can. 12 months into the first discovery, 6 months of my best efforts at an attempted reconciliation, 6 months post-breakup. I'm alive. I survived my journey through infidelity and will continue surviving. It gets better. It'll keep getting better, and despite all of the trauma I'll learn to love again, knowing that I've gotten through some of the roughest days of my life. Thank you for reading. I wish you all the very best in your life journeys. She'll cheat on AP3. She's a serial cheater and they always cheat again. If they'll cheat with you, they'll cheat on you. Get counseling for yourself and your son. You both need it. Then move on with your life. There are thousands of women who are looking for a man of quality. You'll find the woman who will appreciate what she's gaining. Your wife will be back and she'll say I made a huge mistake, blah, blah, blah. Don't take her back. You'll only end up with more heartache and hurt. I didn't realize /know/confirm that she was cheating on someone else with me at the early stages of our relationships. I was pretty promiscuous as a 20-something-year-old too, and getting into exclusive relationships was always a negotiated matter, that is, it doesn't always go without saying, and I'm big on communication. I'm very aware of not wanting to expose our son to that train wreck. Whoever future partners APs are going to try and get the ground rules documented in a parenting plan. But beyond that there's very little I can control. I've been in counseling for 9 months and I've learned a lot, fairly sure it's gotten to a point where I don't need it anymore. I don't want her back in my life, and if she asked I'd probably laugh her out. First of all, I'm so sorry you had to go through all that. She is a broken, selfish woman. There is no other reason for why she continued to hurt you the way she did. Leaving you and your child just shows how terrible she was for both you and your son. I'm sorry your healing has been slow, but I have to commend you for putting your son first. Children are very intelligent and sense things quickly. The fact you haven't put her down and keep reinforcing to him that he is loved and put him in counseling shows what an amazing father you are. He is lucky to have you. As for yourself, Continue with the therapy, talk to people you can trust, and write out your feelings, whether on Reddit or a journal. Therapy and this Reddit group have helped me a lot, even though I'm still in pain because of my selfish husband's extensive cheating. Don't ever blame yourself for her actions. She chose her own path and didn't think about how it would affect you and your son sadly. Try doing things you enjoy daily, no matter how small: coffee, cooking, hiking, meditation, working out, etc. I know you said you haven't been able to focus on your own therapy because you've been focusing on your son, but what about spending time outside the house with your son as a form of therapy? Anytime I've felt really down, my son has been the one thing putting a smile on my face. I just hug him tight and play with him, watch a movie cuddled with him. At least he has been one blessing through the painful hell of infidelity. I wish you and your son all the best. Thanks for listening so far. If story have an update, we will post here. Like, subscribe to our channel for upcoming stories.